America the Beautiful knows Barack Obama as our first African American president. What a proud time in this country. But what most Americans don't know is 5 presidents that came before Mr. Obama that were African American. Unlike our president, Mr. Obama, these men were unable to come out and disclose their race. It was in a time when this was not acceptable. I myself was surprised to find out the nationality of some of these presidents. I had no idea. But historically, it was documented that they were African American. So I will share this information with you guys. Please like and subscribe to help my channel grow. Thomas Jefferson was the third president of the United States. His term ran from 1801 to 1809, and yes, he was a black man. His mother was a half-breed Indian, and his father a mulatto man, which is a half-white and a half-black man. Jefferson is famous for his relationship with his slave, Sally Hemings, in which he fathered many children with her. The reason that story was so famous was because President Jefferson signed an act to abolish the slave trade. So that's what made that, story so unique, that here's a man who's abolishing the slave trade, but he owns a slave and many more. Outside of that, he also helped write the Declaration of the Independence. He also helped draft the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. And he also helped to establish the United States Military Academy. Mr. Jefferson had many accolades during his terms, and he was a good man. So, Mr. Jefferson, yes, he was a black man. Andrew Jackson was our 7th president of the United States. He served from 1829 to 1837, and yes, he was a black man. His father was a full-blooded black man, and his mother was a white woman from Ireland. Mr. Jackson's father had other children, and those children were sold into slavery because they did not possess the mulatto skin that our President Jackson had. President Jackson had many accolades throughout his career, and some of those were that he defeated the British at the Battle of the New Orleans. He had a reduction in corruption in government. He was also the founder of the modern Democratic Party, of what we know today. Mr. Jackson also participated in something called the first president to conduct a kitchen cabinet. He embraced the power by using his veto. And he also played a leading role in the all-white males' right to vote. There were many different accolades and decisions that were made under Andrew Jackson's term. But yes, he was a black man. Abraham Lincoln was our 16th president of the United States. He served from 1861 until 1865. And yes, he was a black man. His father was a black man from America, and his mother was an Ethiopian from a tribe in Africa. He was a tall, slender man, and it was said that during his childhood, he was castrated. Mr. Lincoln was stricken with mumps during the early part of his childhood. And yes, at a later date, he was actually castrated. He was never able to have children because of this. Mr. Lincoln was in office during the time of Civil War. America was at a horrible time. We were warring against each other, the North against the South. And Mr. Lincoln's position was he felt that Americans should not be battling each other, and he wanted peace. So when the war was over, Lincoln called for what was now known as the Emancipation of Proclamation. This was to end slavery or free the slaves. It was supposed to. But it didn't work out like that, and slavery continued for many years. He is also famous for making the Gettysburg Address. That was a speech that he gave at the National Soldiers Cemetery in Gettysburg. Unfortunately, President Lincoln met his demise on April 14, 1865, by the hands of John Wilkes Booth. Unfortunately, his presidency was cut short, and I'm sure he probably had many great things that the country was unable to witness. But yes, Mr. Lincoln was a black man. Calvin Coolidge was our 29th president of the United States. He served from 1923 until 1929, and yes, he was a black man. He used to say that his mother was dark complected, but he claimed it was because she had some Indian and some other nationalities mixed in her blood. But in fact, her maiden name was Moore. In Europe, a Moor was a person of color, and it was equivalent to Americans calling African Americans the N word. So, yeah, he was clearly black. Some of his accolades included he granted citizenship to the natives, to the Indians. He also was very pro black. He once proposed a law to uplift African Americans that included that lynching was against the law. But of course, it was struck down by the southern states and the southern Democrats at the time. Mr. Coolidge also had a successful career as a lawyer early on before he became a president. He served as mayor of Northampton, and he also served as the 48th governor of Massachusetts. So there were many accolades that he accomplished during his lifetime. And yes, he was a black man. Dwight Eisenhower was our 33rd president of the United States. He served his term from 1953 until 1961. And yes, he was a black man. His mother's name was Ida Elizabeth Stover Eisenhower, and she was an anti war advocate. She was totally against war. She was a mulatto woman, which meant that one of her parents was black and the other one was white. Mr. Eisenhower had a lot of accolades during his presidency, and some of the highlights include he sponsored and signed the Civil Rights Bill of 1957. He also sponsored and signed the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956. He ended the Korean War, and he kept America at peace during his term. That was a huge accomplishment because prior to him, we had many, many years of war. Dwight Eisenhower did many accomplishments during his career as presidency and before and after. Those are just some of the highlights. But yes, he was a black man. Like President Obama, all five of these presidents mentioned in the story have one thing in common. They all had one parent that was a black person. Unlike Obama, who was proud of his culture and proud of his heritage, these presidents didn't get to embrace, experience, and celebrate their race. They were ashamed of who they were because society deemed them to be something terrible if they were of color. That's a terrible thing to have to hide who you really are and be in fear of someone finding out and denying it every moment of the day. It's really bad. I'm so glad the culture is changing and has changed. We've come a long way, America. Let's keep pushing, let's keep doing better, and let's keep loving on each other. Please like and subscribe to help my channel grow.